The games industry is known for changing drastically with time, and while plenty of gaming trends and popular genres have come and gone through the years, action-adventure games is one that has remained in fashion since the longest time. And there's a good reason for that. We like being transported to fantastical realms and play the role of a hero as they embark on a nigh-impossible quest, and video games are the perfect medium for living out that fantasy. Creating such games once required huge amounts of manpower and resources, which was something that only AAA studios with a strong financial backing could manage. But thanks to modern technologies and accessible game engines, studios without these luxuries are able to create experiences that can rival the biggest blockbusters at a fraction of the budget. So it's no surprise that the AA and indie game scene has exploded in popularity in recent times, and we love to give a spotlight on such games. We have previously covered games including, but not limited to, Project, The Perceiver, Faith of Danshant Hereafter, Black Myth Wukong, and others. And today we have yet another game that looks absolutely amazing. So let's dig deep into Blight Survival and discuss many of its gameplay aspects and why it could be one of the biggest surprises of the near future. Blight Survival is currently in development at Hanier Studio, and this is the studio's debut title. Blight Survival is set against the backdrop of medieval history, a time where wars and conflicts raged in full force, all while art and literature took huge strides in shaping civilization as we know it today. The game takes place in an alternate history 14th century, where a mysterious blight is turning dead soldiers into monsters, and because a never-ending war of factions is going on in full force, the Blight is producing an army of undead. The unique setting gives way to this interesting premise, which looks like a neat spin on the tried and tested zombie narrative that we have come to know and love. Sure, it might be treading familiar ground in many ways, but it could certainly branch off and develop a narrative that doesn't hinge too closely on stereotypical zombie tropes. While the setting itself looks novel and well realized for the most part, there's perhaps no argument that most players would be jumping in for the gameplay, and suffice to say, it has us salivating for the final release. Blight Survival is a co-op game with procedurally generated levels, so players will be jumping into this world with up to 3 other friends as they try to survive the undead onslaught and get to the bottom of it all. The trailer opens up with a brutal finisher by our player character, and that sets the perfect tone for what's to come. Hanier Studio seems to have paid a lot of attention to the feel of the combat, and it really shows in the final product. The combat in Blight Survival is absolutely brutal, and every swing of your weapon has a certain weight to it, and character movements are hefty enough to feel realistic, but not too heavy that they end up feeling slow and unresponsive. It's a very careful balance that even some AAA developers fail to nail down, so it's rather surprising that Hanier has managed to get it right this first time around. And when it comes to the act of going through combat encounters, Blight Survival offers plenty of choices to the player. You could try to master the careful dance of swerves and strikes and take on enemies one by one, or you could try to get creative with your strategy for an easier way through levels. You see, this game also features stealth elements, so you could take cover against tall grass and stab enemies in the back with your trusty knife, which also looks slick thanks to superb takedown animations, or you could snipe them from afar by using your handy bow. To be honest, this mix of action and stealth elements reminds us of Asobo's A Plague Tale, and that comparison is by no means a criticism of what Hanier Studio is trying to do. Player progression will also play a huge part in the gameplay proceedings of Blight Survival as well. Once you defeat enemies, you can loot their corpse for resources and currency that you can use to upgrade your character. Resources will also have a rarity level associated with them, so it might be best to be on the lookout for supplies during your time on the battlefield to make the most of your visit to the blacksmith for armor and weapon upgrades. And that brings us neatly over to the weapons, and Blight Survival will feature different kinds of weapons ranging from straight swords to daggers and bows, just to name a few. Each weapon will have different attachments, such as sword hilts and bow material, which will contribute to the power level of the weapon, and this is strong evidence for the fact that player stats will play as much of a role in Blight Survival as your mastery with the mechanics itself, so to be sure, put your best foot forward. Sure, some may feel that the reliance on number-crunching combat isn't the best, but when implemented with careful attention to detail, it can create an engaging gameplay loop of looting and fighting, which can be pretty enjoyable in its own right. And Hanier Studio has stated that it will also allow for build options in combat, so there's that to consider as well. Of course, this feature would be incomplete if we didn't mention the visuals, which obviously look absolutely gorgeous. There's great attention to detail everywhere, ranging from the conscious decision to use a gloomy color palette to period-accurate engravings on the player armor, to even the cloth materials that sway with your movements and the wind. And on top of that, a technically competent visual makeup consisting of high-quality assets. Alpha particles and dense foliage also breathe so much life into this world, which isn't too surprising considering that the game is being made using the Unreal Engine 5. Finally, we have the topic of release date and platforms. Unsurprisingly, Hanier Studio hasn't mentioned anything on that matter as of yet, but we do know that it will be releasing for PC only as of now. A release date in the ballpark of 2024 seems like a fair guess at this point, though it's important to keep expectations in check, since delays can be frequent when a smaller studio attempts to create such an ambitious project. Those wanting to experience the game on current-gen consoles might get the chance if Blight Survival ends up being a smash hit upon its debut, but as it stands now, it's going to be a long wait at the very least. There's plenty of potential in Blight Survival thanks to its ambitious production values and brutal combat, and we really hope that Hanier Studio does it justice and succeeds in its design goals with the game. That's all for now. If you enjoy what you saw, please hit the like button. And if you're new to the channel, now is a great time to subscribe. We upload brand new videos every single day. After subscribing, don't forget to enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you next time, right here on GamingBolt.